The soft chime of luxury filled the private lounge, low piano notes from hidden speakers, hushed voices of assistants, the rustle of silk sleeves brushing tablet screens. And in the far corner, Seraphina Vale sat alone. Not just seated, but parked like luggage. Elegant, silent, forgotten. Her fingers, adorned with a delicate rose gold ring, trembled slightly as she tried to lift the porcelain coffee cup from the table in front of her. It rattled against the saucer. No one looked up. No one helped. The world moved around her, never toward her. She hated how visible she felt, yet how unseen. Across the lounge, near the vending machine area, meant for staff or delayed commercial passengers, Elian Cross knelt beside his daughter, Juniper, adjusting the loose strap on her pink backpack. He wore the quiet fatigue of a man who worked with his hands, sleeves rolled, palms calloused, shoulders tense. The kind of man who didn't blend into this place of polished marble and designer luggage. But he didn't care. His flight had been canceled. He and Juniper were hoping for a standby seat on the next one out. Juniper leaned close to him and whispered, "Daddy, why is that lady all alone?" Elian looked up. The woman in the wheelchair didn't look fragile. She looked strong, in that way that hinted she'd grown tired of asking for help. She wore a champagne silk blouse, neatly tucked into beige slacks, her long dark hair pinned into a low knot. A leather tote sat untouched beside her, legs crossed at the ankles, as if she was guarding what dignity she had left. Her coffee cup trembled in her grasp again. Elian's eyes narrowed not in pity, but awareness. No assistant near her, no family in sight, no warmth from the sea of people who all looked through her like airport glass. He stood, brushing his hand on his jeans. "Be right back," he told Juniper, his voice quiet. He crossed the marble floor slowly, not like a man rushing to rescue. Just a human, noticing another human. As he approached, Seraphina noticed his boots first scuffed, real before she looked up. Their eyes met. She stiffened, unsure. Most strangers who approached her wanted something, a reaction, a look. Sometimes worse. But this man didn't reach for her or her chair. He crouched beside her, gentle distance between them. "Mind if I keep you company until your flight boards?" he asked. No fake smile. No pity. Just presence. Seraphina blinked. Her lips parted, unsure. Then, like something cracking open just slightly, she gave a soft nod. He pulled over a chair without asking more, sat down beside her. They didn't speak. They didn't need to, not yet. For the first time in hours, Seraphina felt less like a figure in a painting, and more like a person again. Across the lounge, Juniper watched them from afar, her fingers fiddling with a crayon she always kept in her jacket pocket. She began sketching quietly on the back of a boarding pass. And in that quiet moment, the story truly began. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was spacious. The kind of silence you don't want to break too soon, because it's saying something deeper than words. Seraphina held the coffee cup with both hands now, steadying herself. Not just against the tremor, but the uncertainty of what to say. People didn't usually talk to her, not without an agenda, not without staring at the chair first. But this man just sat there. His presence was still, grounded. "Private flight?" he asked gently. She nodded once. Delayed, something about hydraulic systems. Her voice was soft, but precise. Educated, worn thin at the edges. Elian smiled faintly. "Ours was canceled. Commercial. We're hoping to get on standby." She glanced toward the little girl in the distance, now crouched on the floor, scribbling something with fierce focus. "Your daughter?" "Juniper," he said with a nod. "She's 10. Loves drawing. Thinks vending machine sandwiches are gourmet cuisine." That made Seraphina's lips twitch, not quite a smile, but close. "I'm Seraphina," she said after a pause. "Vale." "Elian Cross," he offered, extending a hand. He didn't look at her wheelchair once, just her face. She hesitated, then shook it. Her hand was cool, slender. His was rough, warm. "People usually only speak to me when they need something," she murmured, eyes drifting. "An update, a signature, a headline. You're the first person who's looked me in the eye today." Elian didn't answer right away. He just nodded, accepting her truth without trying to soften it. "I saw your hands shake," he said softly. "Figured, maybe you needed company." Her gaze sharpened. She wasn't used to people noticing her like that and not making it feel like pity. "It's a neurological disorder," she said quietly. "A slow recovery. Some days are better than others. You don't owe me an explanation." She looked at him again, not suspiciously but searching, as if trying to find the catch. There wasn't one. Across the room, Juniper stood up, clutching the little drawing she'd made. She hesitated, then started walking toward them. Seraphina spotted her and gently nudged Elian with her elbow. "Your daughter's coming." He turned just as Juniper arrived, shyly extending the small rectangle of paper. "I drew this," she said. "For you." Seraphina blinked down at it. It was a childish crayon sketcher in her chair, Elian beside her, Juniper between them holding both their hands. Seraphina's breath hitched. She covered her mouth, then slowly reached out and took the drawing with careful fingers. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Juniper smiled. "You looked lonely. Now you're not." Seraphina looked at Elian again this time, eyes misted. And just like that, something shifted. The wall that had surrounded her polished, quiet, and professional, cracked at the edges. "I don't remember the last time someone made something just for me," she said softly. Juniper climbed into Elian's lap and leaned against him. Seraphina stared at the picture again, then carefully placed it inside her bag like it was glass. The lounge began to shift, the volume rising as flight staff walked by, announcing more delays. But something in Seraphina had already moved forward. Something that had been stuck. Not physically, but emotionally. And she knew it had nothing to do with the flight. It had to do with the fact that someone, a child, a stranger, and a man with quiet eyes, had seen her. Not as someone broken, but as someone worth sitting beside. The lounge lights softened as the hours dragged on. Somewhere in the distance, rain had begun to tap against the floor-to-ceiling windows. A light drizzle at first, then steady. The kind of rain that hushes the world. Seraphina watched it, chin slightly tilted, her fingers absent-mindedly running across the ridged paper of Juniper's drawing, now tucked between her hands like a talisman. Elian sat beside her still, unmoving, like he'd decided she was the most natural place to be in the entire airport. Juniper had curled up in the chair beside her father, head resting on his arm, eyelids fluttering. Seraphina glanced down at the little girl, and then back to Elian. "She trusts easily," she said quietly. Elian nodded. "She notices things before I do, people's silences. When something's off, it's like she feels the world first, then asks about it later." Seraphina exhaled softly, that warm ache in her chest growing. "That's a gift. Most adults do the opposite." There was a brief pause between them, filled only by the rain. Then Seraphina asked the question she'd been holding. "What happens when the plane does arrive?" Elian looked at her. She wasn't asking about logistics. She was asking about after. About the end of this accidental moment. "You board it," he said gently, "and the world keeps spinning." Her voice lowered. "And I go back to being alone." He didn't correct her, didn't offer platitudes. He simply let the honesty sit between them like a shared truth. "I used to think it was just the wheelchair," she said after a long moment. "That people were afraid to approach me because they didn't know what to say. But now I think it's because they believe I'm already being taken care of." She looked up at him. "But they're wrong." The words were fragile, but they landed hard. Elian leaned forward slightly, his voice lower now. "You don't have to explain your life to me, Seraphina. Not here. Not in this place full of noise and delay." She smiled a small, genuine curve of her lips. "But I want to." And so she told him about the isolation that came not from disability, but from expectation. About the image her father needed her to maintain polished, composed, perfect, even as her body failed her after the accident. About the silence that grew inside her every time people looked away. "I stopped expecting kindness," she said. "It was easier." Elian's voice was barely a whisper. "Until today." Her eyes lifted, met his. "Yes," she said, "until today." They didn't notice the announcement blaring overhead. Didn't care that another hour had passed. Something else was arriving, not a plane, but a feeling neither of them had felt in a long time. Hope. Not loud. Just there. Juniper stirred beside them, yawning. "I think my drawing made her feel better," she mumbled. Seraphina smiled down at her. "It did, sweetheart. It really did." A staff member in uniform suddenly approached from the far end of the lounge, holding a clipboard. "Miss Vale?" he asked. "Your jet is ready for boarding." Seraphina inhaled slowly, reality pulling her back to the present like a rope around her shoulders. She turned to Elian. "I suppose this is it." He stood with her, not formally, not distantly, like a friend who understood the weight of a goodbye. "Safe flight," he said quietly. But as she gripped the wheels of her chair to turn, she stopped, then surprised even herself. "Will you walk me to the gate?" He didn't hesitate. "Of course." And together, Seraphina in motion for the first time today, Elian beside her, they began to move toward the private jet entrance. Not as strangers anymore. As something. Just beginning. The private gate corridor was quiet, too quiet. Every footstep echoed off the marble like a countdown. Outside the glass wall, Seraphina's jet sat gleaming beneath the soft rain, its stairway lowered, its door wide open. But she didn't move toward it right away. She and Elian stood side by side, just beyond the threshold. Juniper held her father's hand with one and clutched her coloring supplies with the other, her eyes darting between the aircraft and Seraphina. "I don't want to say goodbye yet," Seraphina said suddenly, her voice barely above a breath. Elian turned, surprised, not at the words, but at how much he'd felt the same. "It doesn't have to be forever," he replied. Seraphina let out a quiet laugh, short and soft. "That's what people say right before they disappear." There was a long pause. The kind that holds more than silence, one filled with unsaid things, unmet eyes, and a quiet fear of ruining something real by naming it too soon. "I'm not great at this," Elian admitted. "Talking to people like this, letting them in." Seraphina turned toward him in her chair, her brow softening. "Then why did you come over?" He looked down at his daughter. "Because Juniper asked me why you were all alone, and I looked over, and for a second, I saw myself." That made her pause. "I know what it's like to sit in a place full of people and feel invisible. I've been that person." Her voice trembled now. "And now, you're the only one I can't stop seeing." Juniper, sensing the heaviness in the air, leaned forward and wrapped her arms around Seraphina's neck without warning. Seraphina blinked, startled, then held her tight. "I don't want you to go yet either," Juniper whispered. Something in Seraphina broke open. And yet, nothing about her felt weak. She looked at Elian. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I don't want to go either, but I don't know how not to." Elian crouched beside her, now eye level again, just like when he first approached her hours ago. "You said you stopped expecting kindness," he said. "Maybe this is where you start again." Their eyes locked. Then Seraphina did something she hadn't done in months. She leaned forward and slowly, on her own, reached down to the wheel of her chair and turned it herself. It wasn't much, but it was her choice, her motion. A signal. Elian stood and looked toward the private boarding desk. The attendant waited patiently. clipboard still in hand. Then Seraphina asked softly, "Is there somewhere to get coffee nearby before I board?" Elian smiled. "There's a terrible machine near the vending area." Her lips curled again. "Perfect." They turned together, not toward the jet, but back the way they came. Not far. Just a few more minutes of borrowed time. And that's when Elian gently placed his hand on the handle behind her chair, not to steer, but to walk with her. And Seraphina didn't stop him. The vending area wasn't far, just past the VIP lounge, tucked into a corridor where polished floors gave way to duller tile. It was quieter here, more forgotten, the air humming faintly with fluorescent buzz. Seraphina didn't care. She was moving, on her own. It was slow. Her arms weren't strong. The tremor returned more than once. But every inch she pushed forward was hers, not a nurse's, not an aide's, hers. And Elian walked beside her the entire way, never touching the chair unless it tipped slightly, never rushing her. Juniper skipped ahead, humming something tuneless and content, her little backpack bouncing behind her. At the coffee machine, Seraphina let out a breathless laugh. "This is worse than I imagined." Elian grinned. "Told you, it builds character." They both stared at the blinking buttons, the faded labels. Eventually, Elian pressed espresso and pulled 2 small paper cups. He handed one to her carefully. She held it between both hands, sipping slow, wincing. "Absolutely terrible." "But earned," he said, raising his own cup in a mock toast. There was a silence again, but this one felt different. Comfortable. Shared. Seraphina leaned back slightly in her chair. "You know, I haven't moved myself in weeks." Elian turned toward her, eyes steady. "Not even to cross a room," she continued. "There's always someone doing it for me. My father's staff, my therapist, the house manager, everyone, helping, and yet, I've never felt more stuck." She looked down at her lap. "Until today." Elian didn't offer encouragement. He didn't need to. She was already changing. "I forgot what it feels like to decide where I go," she whispered. Juniper had sat on the floor nearby now, crayons out again, drawing something new. Elian leaned against the wall, sipping his coffee. "You remember now?" Seraphina looked at him. And then quietly, so quietly, she asked, "Would it be crazy if I didn't board the plane?" He blinked. Not in surprise. In hope. "Maybe a little," he said. "But then again, most of the best things in life start that way." She smiled wide this time, without holding back. It made her whole face soften. Then her phone buzzed. Her eyes dropped to the screen. The caller ID read, "Dad." Priority line. The smile faltered. Her thumb hovered over the button. Elian watched her. "What are you afraid he'll say?" he asked, gently. She stared at the screen. "Nothing. That's the problem. He won't yell. He won't ask. He'll just assume I'm already on the jet, doing what I always do. And if you didn't." Seraphina looked up again, and the way Elian was looking at her. No one had ever looked at her like that. Like she was allowed to choose her own ending. "I'd like to see where this coffee leads," she said quietly. Elian tilted his cup toward her. "Then don't miss your chance." She silenced the call. Her hands were shaking, but this time, not from the tremor. From courage. A decision was forming. And back in her lap, Juniper's new drawing was finished. It showed 3 figures again. Seraphina, Elian, and Juniper. But this time, they were outside. Standing under the rain. Laughing. And Seraphina was standing on her own. The rain outside had slowed to a drizzle, leaving faint streaks against the tall glass windows. The private jet still waited, engines humming softly, stairs lowered, crew watching the gate. But Seraphina Vale was no longer moving toward it. She sat at a small table near the vending machine, sipping bitter coffee from a paper cup like it was the finest roast in the world. Across from her sat Elian Cross, arms folded, his gaze resting gently on her like he wasn't waiting for anything just here. Juniper dozed beside them, head on her dad's jacket, arms wrapped around her drawings. Seraphina kept glancing at her phone, not because she was expecting a call, but because it hadn't rung again. Her father had given up. Or maybe had never noticed she hadn't boarded at all. "I don't know where I'm going," she whispered suddenly. "If I stay, if I don't board, I have no plan, no schedule, no one waiting." Elian looked at her, his voice steady. "That's not the same as being lost." She blinked, and then nodded. For the first time, in months, maybe years, she felt it not control exactly, but ownership. Of her time, of her voice, of the shape of her day. And in that fragile space, she asked quietly, "Can I show you something?" He nodded. She reached into her bag and slowly pulled out a thick, leather-bound folder, the kind that screamed corporate silence and legacy. She slid it across the table. "My father's agenda for me," she said. "Press releases, appearances, strategic partnerships. Every hour accounted for." Elian opened it, flipping through a few pages. Lines, checklists, charts. Then Seraphina took a pen from her purse, and in one long, smooth stroke she drew a line through all of it. Right down the middle. "I'm not going back," she said. Elian looked at her. Not shocked, just proud. She folded the folder closed and placed it to the side, like someone setting down an old life. "I don't know what's next, but I think I'd like to figure that out. With people who don't expect me to be anything but myself." Elian's eyes didn't leave hers. "Then you're in good company." Juniper stirred, blinking up at them groggily. "Did she miss her flight?" she mumbled. Seraphina leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's forehead. "No, sweetheart. I just changed destinations." Juniper smiled and reached into her crayon pouch, pulling out a fresh sheet. "Then I'll draw a new picture." Outside, the jet door closed. The stairs lifted. And inside, Seraphina Vale smiled as she watched it go, not with regret, but relief. Somewhere far above, planes cut through clouds, chasing time. But here, in this quiet corner of the airport, a woman had taken her first real step in months, not with her legs, but with her heart. Elian reached out and gently placed his hand over hers. She didn't pull away, and for once, she didn't feel like she had to move, because where she was with them felt like exactly the right place to begin again.